word on the street regarding health is hydrate. The new word regarding that is live, spelled L-I-V. So get out and live life well with products and systems made with new technology that you simply add to or take with water. You hydrate, lose weight, cleanse your system, gain energy, and it is all natural. Go to mylivezone.com/Kawada to find out more. Live, L-I-V zone.com/Kawada. Let's all get out and live life well. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. Well, took off a bit for the summer, but Dave and Tiff are back with you. Glad you're tuning in. And Tiff, we have a beautiful background on you. As always, our podcast, you have some hints as to our guest is on each episode based on the background. So the tease is, what is the background?
The tease is the beach in Japan, Surigasaki Beach, where the surfing competition for the Olympics were held for the 2020 Tokyo Games. Now, it's not Carissa Moore, but it's the next best Hawaii connection we could find, not named John Florence.
Indeed. It's going to be Kevin Luke, who served as the technical director for the surfing broadcast of the Olympic coverage by NBC. And he's going to not only tell us what the heck a technical director is, but he also works with Spectrum Sports, and he's the director for Spectrum Sports, what we watch for University of Hawaii football, basketball, and I asked him this, but basically for Spectrum Sports, what we see on TV is what he is dictating to his people. So he is part of that broad, which is a great gig if ultimately, as far as getting to work on the Olympic broadcast and seeing Carissa Moore get the first ever gold medal for women's surfing in Olympic competition. So he's going to join us, Kevin Luke, coming up in a little bit. And we're going to talk a little bit about Olympics because, it just got finished. So there's I have a little bit of Olympic withdrawal symptoms every time
I was just gonna ask, because we all know, and you mentioned it to me many times, how you're an Olympic nut, you're an Olympic geek. You watch the opening ceremonies, you had your red, white, and blue, you watched with your wife Janet, and you basically told everybody half an hour, you have to sit down, you have to wear something USA and watch the opening ceremonies. Did this past Monday, August 9th, did it feel weird? No Olympics to turn on?
Yeah, I always have at least a week after this little bit of withdrawal where you don't have something to watch every day, every night, late night, 24/7. But the greatest thing about, as we've advanced in terms of the broadcast coverage, like with NBC, you have Peacock, you have NBC's Olympic.com, where they still have the documentaries and some of these other things. So I actually been watching some of the stuff on Peacock. They have some original documentaries going behind the scenes with the Team USA men's basketball training camp, and they have one about the gymnastic women, the road to their Olympic dream, those kind of things. So I've been watching that to kind of ease me back into civilized, regular sports watching. But yeah, I had my two boys. Actually, it was my wife's idea to have them on the opening ceremonies for at least 30 minutes. Like, they're teenagers. One is 20, one is 17. They don't really give a rip about watching anymore, but 30 minutes, they had to wear red, white, and blue or something and watch. And by golly, credit to them that they did. That just shows you that my wife is the boss in the house. So that's the whole thing. Speaking of the Olympics, what were some of the you watched some? What were kind of your takeaways of the whole events, the games, what have you?
Well, where do you start? You talked about basketball, of course, the dominance of both the men's national team, but also the women. We all know what the men did, losing their first game against France in the preliminary round, and then coming the rest of the way through that tournament to win gold. Kevin Durant, phenomenal once again. But I'd say the story of the basketball games, and it hasn't been touched upon enough because we've been so spoiled by a Diana Taurasi, a Sue Bird, a Brittany Griner. How dominant has Team USA women's basketball been? 7 straight golds. They've won 55, 56 straight games in a row. That has been phenomenal to watch. Soccer was a little bit disappointing, losing in the semifinal round, but ended up winning bronze. Swimming, we all know We all know about Katie Ledecky and all. It was nice to see baseball and softball back on the docket. Both Japan winning the baseball and also softball tournaments. Disappointing that we're not going to see baseball and softball in Paris in 2024. But I think the highlight of the games wasn't even a medal, it was more of the mental health of athletes, and at the forefront with Simone Biles and all that she has gone through, continues to go through, and not participating in many of her events because, as she says, and all gymnasts who have this, twisties. And for us that don't really follow gymnastics outside of the Olympics, we don't really know what they're talking about. So I think for the most part, the main thing from the Olympics has been the continued mental health that has been put at the forefront for these athletes, and not just college professional athletes, but these world-class gymnasts that Simone Biles was at the forefront.
Yeah, you mentioned that as a great point because there's actually some connecting the dots here. Naomi Osaka, right? Before a few weeks before even the Olympics, even several weeks, I think it was a French Open, I believe, right? She mentioned that she didn't want to speak to the press because of the criticism and related to mental health. The connection, of course, is she lit the flame on the opening ceremonies, representing Japan, playing tennis. So that was the first time she played in the Olympics since that French Open situation, which she just dropped out, connected to mental health. The other connection is the great Olympian Michael Phelps, a swimmer. He had actually brought up the fact that he was going through depression during his time when he was a competitive swimmer as well. And there's even a special documentary, I haven't watched it yet, but it's on Peacock, where it's a conversation with Michael Phelps about mental health. So although Simone Biles kind of brought it up even further, it had been kind of trickling on. And I think that's the great thing, is that from this point on, I believe that issue will be brought up probably more often than we will think about these very elite athletes.
Oh, definitely. And I think how opportunistic it was for NBC for their coverage to have Michael Phelps be there as an analyst. And then as soon as this whole situation came up with Simone Biles and the ongoing, is she gonna compete? Is she not? You have Michael Phelps there. And I thought Mike Tirico and everyone at NBC did a great job of utilizing Michael Phelps, not just for the swimming analysis, but also more for the mental health side as well, because us Joe Schmoes that, did high school sports, for some that dabbled in college sports, we kind of have an idea, maybe not, but for these professional athletes to be the main focus of the games, we're all talking about Simone Biles being the GOAT and how many gold is she going to win and which event is she going to score the highest and maybe set a new world record or Olympic record. At the end of the day, these athletes are still human beings. So I think it continues to be tough for these athletes to be at the forefront where they're expected to not only win, but blow their Olympic competitors out of the water in their specific events.
And the always surprising thing I always think about is, with each of these situations, Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, they are and were and are at the top of they're not on a decline. Like, it's one thing if you're an aging athlete and you're under decline, that can bring up a lot of anxiety where you're seeing your skills diminish, your status as a starter, or, you're not the number one ranked player. Naomi Osaka is the number one ranked tennis player, and she still brought up this issue. Simone Biles in this Olympics had qualified as a top all-around qualifier going in the first day during qualifying. So she had done that part. She was a top qualifier for the all-around, and she still had to drop out. And same thing with Michael Phelps. He's considered the greatest. He was the greatest, is the greatest, but he was having issues. So it's just amazing that it doesn't matter whether you're at the top, bottom, high school athlete, Olympic, professional, everyone can be suspect to that. Let's bring it home a little bit to Hawaii, because we're getting ready for football season and everyone's excited, especially here, because University of Hawaii football is going to be playing at their new stadium on campus. UTIF, as the voice of women's volleyball, is going to get started after no season at all. last year, whereas some other schools did, they're going to have their season tickets have gone out and have been sold, but yet here in Hawaii, there's still no official word from the university and definitely not from the state yet as to whether fans are going to be allowed in. And that, although you're getting the excitement, there's still that kind of like you're on the horse going, "Argh," holding back a little bit. And I know with volleyball, you're so excited, but oh, will there be fans?
I'm excited. You're excited. The entire state is jonesing for volleyball. And we saw with the men winning the national championship this past May, they had somewhat of a season. No fans were allowed in Simplify Arena, the Stand Sheriff Center. Like you said, season tickets have gone out. But again, because of the new regulations, the new restrictions that have gone back into place, we're recording this on August 11th. Those came out yesterday, the 10th of August. Any professional gathering that's over 50 people needs what is the Hawaii term? City, state guidelines. We know the mayor is a former UH football player. Was a UH broadcaster. He's a UH alum. He wants to see fans in the stands, whether it's at Clarence T.C. Chin Complex, Simplify Arena Stand Sheriff Center, Les Murakami for baseball when that happens next spring. We all want to see sports live. Players, they feed off of it. The energy, the environment, the spectacle, if you will, that is Hawaii volleyball, whether it's Rainbow Wahine or Rainbow Warrior. Players thrive off the crowd. And like you said earlier, not having a season for the Rainbow Wahine this past year because the Big West canceled it. Them and the Ivy were the only two conferences not to have a season. Everybody else played, whether it was an abbreviated fall into the spring or spring only through the shortened tournament. It's tough. You want to be able to go to the game. You want to be able to go to the match, watch these ladies play. It's going to be tough. To possibly have a second straight year. Well, the first year you didn't have a sport to watch in the fall for women's volleyball, out here at least. Could you imagine having women's volleyball with no fans? Or do we even have limited fans? In say the upper bowl only, and the arena seats 10,300. So if it's a 50% capacity, you're looking at a little over 5,000, under 5,100. And again, how are you going to regulate? Do you have to show proof that you're vaccinated? Do you show your card? Do you socially distance? It's a slippery slope, and I totally get trying to put out season tickets. I get it. I understand it. At the end of the day, you need to make money somehow, but it's going to be very tough to ask for season tickets when we're 12 days out from our recording of the first weekend of women's volleyball on August 27th. Are we going to have fans? How many are you going to have? And we all know from the COVID pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, now with this Delta variant, things change not just weekly, not just daily, they change hourly. And the restrictions, they continue to change. So it's tough to plan and look in the future when at a moment's notice, you could go back down into a tier.
Yeah, of course it's going to, all this spike here in the state of Hawaii would happen just before school starts, just before the fall sports season starts. My feeling, hey, make it for the vaccinated. It seems like the data shows the ones that are getting all the positive COVID-19 are those that are unvaccinated. You're vaccinated, I'm vaccinated. Bring your card. You get to go and watch sports and enjoy because you were responsible enough to take care of yourself and help the others. That's my soapbox on that whole thing. All right, let's go back to the beach, to the beach behind. What's the name of the beach again, Tiff?
Surigasaki Beach.
Surigasaki Beach, because our guest was there for about a week and a half as the technical director for the NBC Sports Olympic coverage of surfing, witnessing Carissa Moore winning the first gold medal. Kevin Luke will join us right after this. Let's take a time out. This is the Dave and Tiff Sports Podcast. Award-winning Hawaii sports writer Cindy Lewis shares her love of volleyball and other sports topics with her new website, cindylewis.com. After nearly 40 years of covering the top events in Hawaii, Cindy brings her reporting flair and insight to the digital format for all to enjoy. Get the very latest information on University of Hawaii volleyball for all teams, women, men, and beach, from one of the most respected journalists in the state. Go to cindylewis.com and you will be connected. Well, if there is someone that has traveled a significant amount of distance to be on our podcast, it's our next guest, Kevin Luke, who is the technical director for the Olympic surfing broadcast. So someone who saw Carissa Moore win the gold live is joining us literally almost off the plane after coming all the way from Tokyo, 20 plus hours, multitudes of time zones to join us. So first of all, Kevin, thank you so much. By the way, I don't know what day it is that you think it is, but in any case, thanks for joining us on our podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be back.
First off, I mean, just for us guys who don't know what a technical director is for a broadcast, what is the duties? What is that job?
If you guys have ever seen a TV control room, the technical director is the person that basically punches all the buttons when the director asks, for a camera one, and I press the camera one button. So it's basically like a big video game.
Wow. So literally you just left Tokyo maybe a day ago through, I think we were talking just before we started, through San Fran and back in Honolulu. So, I mean, how much sleep have you had over the past 24 hours?
Actually had a good night's sleep. What happened was our contract with the broadcasting service that we work for to produce the Olympics, we were contracted to work all the way through August 3rd. So even though the competition finished last Tuesday, we were basically holed up in our hotel for another week. We're kind of on quarantine. We're only allowed to go to the 7-Eleven just around the corner to eat. We got fed lunch, but we were on our own for dinner. So it was kind of an interesting week in the hotel. Just this whole crew of people from around the world just trying to get through the week. I mean, it was fine. We're getting paid, but still, everyone wanted to go home. So it's good to finally be back after that basically a week off and finally getting home.
I mean, everyone dreams of either, well, for those who do have great athletic skill, you dream of being a participant in the Olympics. And for those like you who have these broadcast skills and that kind of career, you dream of getting a gig like this. How did you get this gig?
Actually, I was contacted a month before the Olympics. Everything kind of, I'd say a lot, some of it was luck. The story that I got from a lot of the people that I work with is a lot of the Australians were declining to work the Olympics because after we were done, when they go home, they're forced to do another 14 days of quarantine. So a position opened up because I guess the original technical director decided that he didn't want to have basically a month away from his regular job. He couldn't take the time off. So I got contacted a month before by the director, whom I had worked with before on Pipe Masters and other local surf meets here, and then I took the gig. Olympics I've been in broadcasting for almost 30 years, and the Olympics were kind of on my bucket list of jobs to do, and boom, knocked it off. Just like that.
Kevin, us in the media, we're told, and we know it's a professional job. You're not supposed to cheer when you're in the press box or in the truck. When you're in the truck and you're seeing John do his thing throughout the heats, but more so, especially with Carissa going through the quarterfinals and the semifinals, when you knew she was going to compete for a medal, and then when you saw her in that gold medal heat, was it tough to work while also rooting for somebody from the state?
I'm gonna admit for the first few days, it kind of felt like a normal surf broadcast for us. If people aren't familiar with surf broadcast, normally if the waves are good and it's a go, then it's usually like an 8 or 9 hour day on air. I mean, straight, start from 8 o'clock to 4 p.m. So the first few days kind of felt like a regular surf broadcast. But when it was getting towards the end, especially when Carissa got the gold medal, kind of hit me. I'll have to admit I was kind of tearing up because just the fact that it was the Olympics. It was a big deal that it was the very first surf broadcast, and somebody from Hawaii that was getting the gold medal. It was awesome. But on the flip side, because it was the surf broadcast, they're documenting a lot of things that we were doing. So there was a cameraman right over my shoulder. Um, so kind of had to temper everything that was going on there. Um, but yeah, when she got the gold, when she was coming out of the water and just her jubilation and her emotions, it did kind of hit me because it was my thoughts were, um, what am I doing here? I'm in Japan. It was a last minute thing, and I'm watching someone from Hawaii get the gold medal. So it was pretty awesome.
You had also mentioned to me that there were a few others from the state that were within the surfing broadcasts. What all was everybody doing that represented Hawaii?
There were 5 of us from here. Another person was the main audio guy, so he was in control of a lot of the audio, and there are a couple of audio assistants. There was another guy who he's actually from Brazil, but he lives in Wailua now. He was in charge of the graphics. And then we had another guy who was assisting with audio who was from here, was born here, but he lives in Denver now. So there were realistically 6 of us from Hawaii working on the surf broadcast. So that was pretty cool.
You had also mentioned that, with all these behind the scenes people from all over the world, language barriers, it can be tough, but everybody can speak surfing and everybody can speak, broadcast terms and technology and whatnot. How was it working with other people from around the world?
It was pretty interesting. So in the morning, we'd have a 3:30 bus ride. It's a half-hour bus ride from our hotel to the venue. So in the morning, on the bus, you hear all these different languages. You hear French being spoken, Portuguese, Spanish, and then when we get in the truck, as I mentioned to you, we had people from Australia, Spain, Portugal. The guys who were in charge of the truck were from Spain. So there were some language barriers, but at the same time, we were able to kind of figure things out with hand signals, gesturing, pointing. And it was really cool because these people were from all over the world and they're very good at what they did. So as a team, we're together. Together, we're all able to put a really good broadcast on because of the knowledge and the passion that everybody had for the job. So it was really cool. Just it's a little different from the actual Olympic athletes, but at the same time, we're from all around the world. So just the fact that we're all able to bond and work together like that was really cool.
Our guest here is Kevin Luke, who was served as a technical director during the Olympic surfing broadcast. Also, you're director with Spectrum Sports, so you do a lot of the University of Hawaii sports and all that, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I was very curious as to, you alluded to a little bit here with kind of transportation, your working setup, and who you're working with. You hear all about during this Olympic situation with the pandemic, how things were organized on the ground in terms of where you could go, what you could do. You said you could only go to the 7-Eleven and that's about it. Your hotel, was it like next to the village? Like where were you guys housed in relation to the athletes or anything else?
See, for us is very different because we were because our event was in Chiba, which is actually an hour and a half out of Tokyo. So we were separated basically from the rest of the Olympic world. The athletes kind of stayed someplace else. The hotel that we were in, it was chosen because it was approved by the Olympic Committee. So I think it was used, it was used as a COVID isolation hotel when we weren't there. But so we basically took over the whole hotel. It was just the whole surf crew was in the hotel. So unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to go to Tokyo to see the other events. From the paperwork that I had read, we would have been able to do that. We could have booked a shuttle. We could have chosen where we wanted to go, but we weren't able to do that. But again, just the whole experience was still a great experience. Even in the time of COVID, it was still a great thing to do.
And were you like being tested daily, that kind of thing as well?
Yes. So Actually, going back to before we even left, had to get tested twice before we even got on the plane. When we got to the airport, it took about 2.5 hours to get through all the paperwork, um, checking all the tests that we had. We had to take a saliva test when we got in. Um, Everybody from different countries had different protocols. For us, we just had to do the saliva test every 3 days, but because it was available, we just did it every day. It's just, just to be safe. And then to come back into Hawaii, Hawaii has Hawaii has their own rules and regulations. We had to go to Narita and get our own the nasal test, the one that goes all the way up into your brain. That wasn't fun, but so we had to do that, but we took advantage of it as because the five of us from Hawaii, because we were on our own little field trip. We had a couple hours, so our driver took us to the nearest sushi bar, and even though we weren't allowed to go in, we sent him in with some money. He came out with this whole platter of sushi, so we were able to do that. But and then coming back, just just making sure that we were all tested and we're good to go. And the whole safe travels thing of just getting back here. So a lot of paperwork, a lot of emails, a lot of QR codes, but got through it.
Wow, that I know that's a daunting kind of thing. What about what was your souvenirs like? Did you get any swag? Were you able to bring some stuff back home that says, "Look, I mean, you're gonna put in a glass case. This is my experience at the Olympics," that kind of thing?
Uniforms. We had uniforms. It was actually this huge duffel bag. I didn't realize at the time, but they asked for our t-shirt size and even pants measurements, so I get tailored pants out of it. But all the broadcasting team, they have uniforms. So if you watch the remainder of the Olympic Games, anyone wearing gray shirts and like khaki pants, those are the uniforms that we got. So you get uniforms. Was able to grab a couple t-shirts leaving leaving Haneda at the airport. Would have liked to get more, but if anything, the best memories coming away from Tokyo is the food. I mean, just the 7-Eleven food is. I was told before I left, don't worry, the 7-Eleven food will get you through. And yeah, the 7-Eleven food in Japan was just awesome.
Yeah, I know about that 7-Eleven. It's way better than the 7-Elevens here. It's a lot more diverse and stuff. Last thing here, Kevin, like what's next for you? I got UH Sports getting back in gear. What's kind of on the docket for you coming up?
Well, actually, with this whole surf thing, the Olympics and doing a lot of this other surf stuff for the first time, I'm going to be finishing off the WSL tour. So got Mexico this week, and then Tahiti, and then Trestles. So I'll be back doing the UH Sports at around the end of September. So not bad. I'm only going to miss the first football game. Going to miss about a month of volleyball, but really looking forward to Wahine volleyball this year after not having it last year. And I'm going to miss some soccer games too. But once I'm back in September, just getting can't wait to get rolling again with that.
So even for the Spectrum Sports, are you the technical director or do you do a different role?
I'm usually the director, so I'm the one that tells the I'm sorry, hold on.
Omakase.
Sorry about that, guys.
It's Carissa Moore saying, "Hey, can I get a highlight? The one of my last ride for my files."
Ask that again, or pick it up again, or okay. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Can you ask the question again?
Oh, like what your role as for Spectrum Sports, is it the same as what you're doing in the Olympics, or is it a different role?
Usually for the Spectrum broadcast, I'm the director, so I'm calling all the shots, telling the story with the pictures, telling the technical director what pictures to take. But it's a great team we have on the Spectrum side. Looking forward to working with Kanoa and football this year. There's a big loss, with Robert passing away. That one admittedly kind of hit me hard too. I mean, Robert was a great person to work with. But looking forward to working with Kanoa and football again this year for the first time.
So just to clarify for the layman, as a director of a broadcast, if we're sitting at home, what we see on TV is because of what you're telling to be seen, right?
Yes. So
right.
hopefully telling the story correctly. It's tricky because as a UH fan, you're rooting for the team, but at the same time, We are, the broadcast is being seen on like Big West Sports on the mainland. So we're trying to be as partial as possible, impartial as possible. Uh, so just trying to tell the story, but at the same time, as a fan, I mean, I'll admit, and I'm sure when Tiff is calling games too, inside we're cheering, but at the same time, we know we're having to tell the story for everybody. So it's a great job. I mean, I've been doing UH Sports for over the last 10 years or so, and that's a dream gig too, as a sports fan and as a broadcaster.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've had a busy month. Looks like you're going to have another busy month ahead of you. But we appreciate, again, in between country stops, you're taking the time to be part of our podcast. Kevin Luke, who was a technical director of the Olympic surfing broadcast, witnessing Carissa Moore win the first gold medal for surfing for women, and also the director for Spectrum Sports for the upcoming University of Hawaii season. Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time, a brief moment before you get out your passport and head out again.
All right, thanks, guys.
Over 30 years of experience of covering Hawaii sports and telling stories can be found with BedrockSportsHawaii.com. Hawaii sports writer Nick Abramo shares his passion for insight, news, and opinions, along with stories and tales in what he calls the inexhaustible universe of athletics. Football, surfing, hockey, yes, hockey, and wrestling are some of the featured content you will find on BedrockSportsHawaii.com. All right, you know how it is in sports. It seems like the new term over the past couple of years has been the word analytics. Now, that is just a real fancy way of saying using numbers to determine what you do. So suddenly all the sports nerds have become very popular. I'm not a sports nerd. I've not been one to be very big on the numbers, but it is part of sports, right? There's stats, there's data. Tiff, you're much better at this. So we're trying this new segment called Analytics, in which we're going to bring up some trivial information that deals with numbers and data that maybe you may not have thought of. So Tiff, you want to go first?
All right, let's see how this goes. Okay, first dote here, if you will. Tokyo Games. Roughly 5,000 of the medals were made from recycled cell phones.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Tokyo is the first city to hold the Paralympic Games twice, 1964, and they're going to be hosting here in just a few days. 4, the number of new sports introduced at the Tokyo Games here in 2020. We're talking surfing, skateboarding, karate, and sport climbing. We talked about baseball and softball. They've been in the Olympics before and they were brought back. In Paris in 2024, one sport is going to be added for the first time, and it's called breaking or breakdancing. And the last one here for you, Dave. In Paris 2024, there were 3 other sports that were campaigned to get added into the Olympics, but they were unsuccessful. Chess, billiards, and squash.
You know what I say to that? Thank goodness. Thank goodness if any of those. I don't even think breakdancing should be in the Olympic Games. And I know there's been a move for things like poker. It's like they're board games. Nobody sweats, I know breaking you sweat, but it's just okay. I do wish they'd have baseball and softball though. All right, here's mine. Here's mine. Okay. I'm going to step away from the Olympics for a second. NFL, which is going to be starting pretty soon, so we're happy for the NFL. Although maybe a starter, backup quarterback Taysom Hill of the New Orleans Saints just got a contract extension. His salary is more than the combined salaries of all WNBA players. So he just signed a 4-year, $140 million contract which includes, roster bonus, signing bonus, all that, but a base salary of 1.035 million. So in other words, his compensation that he's getting with the bonuses for this year is more than every WNBA player. So perspective, the average WNBA salary is $120,000. And the highest, or the supermax, that you can get in the WNBA, like by Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, who won gold medals, is $221,000. So
and that's not even including some of these women who, after the WNBA season is done, they're going overseas and playing an additional season because of the lack of contract money that is coming in. It's absurd. You talk about Taysom Hill, that's a large contract for what many feel is a backup quarterback.
Right. Gee, I'd love to be a backup quarterback and not get hurt every week and get that kind of dough. But the argument always is that you can say, well, the disparity in pay, but the revenues that the WNBA makes through the TV rights and it's just not as much as the NBA or the NFL. So I mean, it's a business. Bottom line, it's still a business, and you got to have the revenues to support your expenses. Here's my last one and let's go back to the Olympics. Although U.S. Olympic athletes are not paid per se to participate, unless a sponsor sponsors their team. So that, like, Nike sponsors the men's basketball team, so they get a little bit more. But the United States Olympic Committee does offer monetary awards if you win medals. So, for instance, if you win a gold medal, it's worth $37,000. If you win a silver, $22,500, and if you win a bronze, $15,000 per medal. So, Olympic swimmer, star of the games, Caleb Dressel, with 5 gold medals, he made I have to read with my glasses here, $187,000 for his 1 week period in the Olympics, just on the medals alone. And of course, he'll reap benefits with sponsorships and so forth and so on that a gold medal winner usually gets. But that's the compensation officially that Olympic athletes do get if they win medals.
Life is good. Life is very good.
You think about it like, oh, for 1 week of work, but the work that was put in prior to that, where Caleb Dressel wasn't making no money. Maybe he got a few sponsorships here and there, but the truth of the matter is most Olympic athletes are, not financially sound. They have to, parents and supporters have to fund their expenses, sometimes moving to another location to train, the travel to train, to compete, so forth and so on. So it is a significant struggle, unlike, China, Russia, where the government goes into the villages and finds kids at 6 or 5 years old, plucks them out and puts them in these training academies to train them to become athletes and fund them. The United States is not like that. So, and I'm glad we'll stick to that anytime. All right. So it's great talking with Kevin Luke, who was the technical director of the Olympic broadcast. And then, as he mentioned, he's going to miss a few of the University of Hawaii initial games because he did so well with the Olympics. He's got some other surfing broadcasts he's going to be covering. He's on his way, I think, to Mexico.
He's actually in Mexico for this current competition as we're recording. He's in Mexico, and then he's got a few others that he'll be at covering or be part of the production staff. So he's a very, very busy guy.
Oh, he's an Olympian. He's a media Olympian. And I bet you when he comes to the UH Sports, he's going to be showing off that uniform that he got to wear and so forth. So congratulations to him. Until next time, thanks, Tiff, for coming on. This has been Dave and Tiff Sports Broadcast. Hope you tune in next time. And always stay safe.
Wear that mask. Be socially distant.